Instagram, Go Erie, Facebook. I'm Erie Times News online reporter Sarah Grabsky. We are here at the Erie County Historical Society with Amanda Rockwell. She's a curatorial assistant. Rockwood. Sorry, my bad. And George Deutsch. He's, of course, the executive director here. I'm sure you've seen him before. Where are we, guys?
We're in the library of the Carriage House, which is the focal point for public research.
So we are going to be trying to taking you behind the scenes today, but we've had a few technical difficulties here in the past half an hour. So before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about what's new here, some of the exciting things going on here, and of course what you can find here. And a lot of the people don't realize what a great public resource the Historical Society is, and the last few years have certainly been eventful, haven't they, George?
It certainly have. We are in the middle of a new building project. If you go back 5-6 years, the campus here, the Thomas Hagen History Center campus, was renovated with our existing 2 buildings plus building a 10,000 square foot annex, which is our archives building. Now we're in the process of doing 3 more buildings. The Wood-Morrison House next door will have the ribbon cutting on Wednesday, and that is an 1858 house that we have renovated for our education center. And then we are building a 6,000 square foot new exhibit building, a history building that will house, including other things, the comprehensive history of Erie County, and then another 5,000 square foot onto the, which will be an annex to our archives building, which will house our 3D exhibits. And Amanda here, as our assistant curator, is deeply involved in that.
So tell us a little bit about the work you have been doing, Amanda.
So in the archive building, we store all the items that we catalog, put in our system past perfect, which all the items actually are being brought in from our second location on State Street. And those are items that were donated to us, or, people sometimes just simply getting things out of the house. And we get to look them up, see if they are already in the system from past collections, or just simply looking up a fun story, see if it's related to the home or Erie in general. Then we can catalog them and keep them, and hopefully one day display them.
And this has been a years long plus project, right?
Yes. And well, when you have 26,000 cubic feet of stuff that goes back well over 125 years of collecting from the Erie Museum and the Erie County Historical Society, there's a lot of objects to go through. So it's a multi-year project.
One thing, George, I wanted to ask you about is a lot of people will call and say, how do I see the Watson-Curtsey mansion? What is it being used for? What is the capacity now? How can the public come to the mansion?
Well, we are open to the public during the winter from Thursday to Saturday, 11 to 5 every day. They can come and tour. We have 11 galleries in the mansion that have parts of Erie history. And then if they're interested, we also have the capacity, if you'd like to have a reception, hold a shower, do something. I know my granddaughter's birthday party last year we had in the mansion. We do have that available, and our events coordinator handles that. But you can actually come and make use of the mansion besides walking through and seeing the exhibits.
Such a cool space, too, to do that with. So I just got the privilege of going through the Wood-Morrison House, which you guys will see later this week after the ribbon cutting. But it's kind of the start of the show this week. So George, can you tell us, without giving too much away, some of the history behind the house, which is absolutely fascinating?
Sure. It was built in 1858 by Dr. William Wood. He was the fleet surgeon for the Great Lakes stationed here in Erie, and he would later go on to serve in the Civil War, and from there he would become the first Surgeon General of the Navy. He built that house, and in 1865, when he moved to the D.C. area with his family, he sold the house to the Morrison family. The son of the Morrison family, William Morrison, would later also have a Navy career. He'd go on to become the captain of the Wolverine, which was stationed here, the first ironclad warship in the U.S. Navy dating back to the 1840s. He'd be the last captain, and he'd also be the first superintendent at Presque Isle. He would live in this house from the time of his birth till his death, and eventually his family would then sell the house to the Erie Art Club, which would eventually become the Erie Art Museum. So the house has a tremendous amount of Erie history, and we've done a beautiful renovation. And after our ribbon cutting on Wednesday, we'll be having classes, teachers coming through. We'll also be building exhibits inside, which will come through the winter.
The space is just fabulous, so you are in for a treat. So tell us a little bit about, and again, just in the short hour I've been here, I've learned more about Erie history than probably in the 5 years I've lived here. Tell us about a little bit about the space that we're standing in right now, the Carriage House, what it used to be used for, and when it was built.
Well, the Carriage House was built at the same time that the mansion was, so it opened in 1892. The coachman who handled the horses and the various coaches for the families is before cars, although I'm sure cars were ultimately stored here. There was several horse stalls. The room that we're standing in, the library, was where they stored the carriages, and it was a working building. And the Carriage House the title tells it all. It's where the transportation for the family was centered. Which is
just fabulous. So, okay, now I'm going to try and take the camera back to the archives, but again, we just thought it would be cool to show you guys kind of what, especially Amanda, I'm sure, has been going through over the last year or so. And if we don't get, because we're having an issue with wireless connection, so if you can't see it live, I will post a video then later kind of showing you what we are doing here today that I can just post to our Facebook timeline. So, George, if people have questions, call you, email you.
The phone number here, if you'd like to call, and depending on who you want to talk to, from our museum educator to our events person to the person that does our fundraising, and I will put a plug in that it's vital that we have memberships and other help from the community to keep the lights on and everybody employed. We're all there on the list. It's 454-1813, and you can just listen and know who to talk to, but we'd love to have you stop down and visit us.
All right, we will head to the archives now, and hopefully we won't lose you guys. Okay, perfect. All right, George, you can lead the way. We'll see when we lose connection here, or if we lose connection. We could be optimistic here. All right, this is the space. This is insane.
So you want to at least shoot from here
yes.
down. So what you're looking at are space saver shelving, and these contain literally boxes, if you'd stack them end to end, that would run almost 2 miles long of Erie's history. And you can see the number of space saver units that we have, and they are just packed with boxes that can tell you almost anything you'd want to know about Erie history. And at the very end of the aisle, you can see part of one rack there, and you can see the rolled items. We have an entire wall of the archives building that is filled with over 100 years worth of building plans for Erie public buildings that have gone since basically the turn of the last century.
Share with us the map that you were showing me earlier that's new.
Well, we have a number of art items, some of them still in storage, others are out on our art racks here. This particular map is really a fun map. It's 1850, the city of Erie, and we are actually located in this blank space Canal comes right through. Next door, on the other side of the Wood-Morrison House, you can see where the canal came through. There's a lock here between 7th and 8th Street, and the city was small enough. You got to about Parade Street on this side, and pretty much the canal, except for a little bit in here on the west side of the street. And this was the city. If you look down as far as here, this is Buffalo Road, and so Mill Creek comes through here. So that was the city in 1850. The other interesting part about below us here in this area of town was called Jerusalem, and it was the black settlement. The African Americans lived in this part of the city going all the way back into the mid 1850s. And so we are bordering on a very historic part of the city. But you can see here, this is Perry Square, so for your orientation, and what still is was known as the public dock. And so this was the city 175 years ago.
So this is this map is an example of all kinds of stuff that you have back here.
Oh yes.
That you'll put on display. You basically rotate. Yes.
And sure, we have maps of various sizes and various degrees of detail that really cover the history of not only the city but the county. The next map down is an 1850s map of the entire county.
Anything else you want to add, George? This is a big week for you guys.
Yeah, we have a lot going on with our ribbon cutting and opening up the education center. If you turn 180 degrees past Amanda there, you'll see our working space for processing our documents. Our archives crew always is working on new collections and conserving old collections, and that's part of our basic preservation, what they do here, and then what the curatorial staff does in the other part of the building, which hopefully you'll be able to connect to, is pretty fascinating work, kind of behind the doors. This is not something that the public generally can tour through.
Absolutely. So we'll keep going, but we might lose you here.
We'll let Amanda take the lead.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, actually, I don't know how far you're going to make it.
We might be almost gone. It will tell me when we've got low wireless connection.
So actually, this whole pile on the ground here, this is all boxes, items that we have not gone through yet, but we will eventually be able to bring them up on the mezzanine, which is where all our workstations are, and that's where Past Perfect is. But we just simply look for a number, look for a fun story. If it relates to Erie, like I said earlier, or the mansion, or just genuinely has a good story and is worthy of keeping possible future display, then we put it in the system upstairs. But unfortunately, some items are broken when we receive them, even in our books. Like George was saying, we have hundreds and hundreds of years of all these cataloged items. If not, they're broken, not a good story. Actually, what you're taping right now, all those shelving, that is all stuff that we're eventually going to deaccession, and hopefully someone can love them and give them a home. But yes, this is our big storage area, and then like I said, we bring them upstairs, which this is the mezzanine up there where the computers are. That's where we're putting them in the system, taking pictures.
And if you pan to the left a little bit, you'll see some of our 3D storage now. All those boxes have barcodes on them, so we're using a modern system so we can find and retrieve anything we're interested in or asked about. And below, you'll see some of our larger toys from the local Mark's Toy Company, which was here for many, many years. The smaller ones are in boxes, but those are some of the larger ones.
Well, actually, how the barcode system works, there's a container number, which that gets actually put into the system, and then we print off the other barcodes, which that's going to help us one day. Instead of having to take the entire box down, I could go bring a big ladder up, scan it with a scanner, and it'll pop up on our system, so that way we can see, oh yes, this is good for a future exhibit, or just get any information on it instead of, like I said, having to bring down a box, open it up, and look for the item.
Okay. Perfect, you guys. I think that this is all I want to go until, because I'm
yeah.
afraid that I'm going to lose them. So thank you guys so much for everything.